It's a sobering truth that far too many people never make it to 85, and the reason isn't what most of us were told. You might assume it's bad luck or family history, but the reality is far more shocking. Research shows that nearly 3 out of 4 people who die before 85 share the same 5 habits. Habits so common that most seniors don't even realize they're dangerous. Doctors often chalk these issues up to normal aging, but the healthiest 90-year-olds prove otherwise. They didn't rely on genetics to carry them through the decades. They simply made different choices. Choices that protected their bodies, kept their minds sharp, and gave them the energy to keep living with independence and purpose. The encouraging news is that it's never too late to change course. In this story, you'll discover the 5 deadly habits that silently steal years from people over 60, along with practical steps that can help you avoid them. And before we're done, I'll share one powerful longevity secret that 95% of people over 100 have in common. It's not what you think, and it's something you can begin today. Your next chapter could be stronger, healthier, and longer than you ever imagined. Sandra was 68 years old when she realized that something in her life wasn't adding up. On the surface, she thought she was doing everything right. Every morning, rain or shine, she laced up her sneakers and went for a 30-minute walk around her neighborhood. Her neighbors admired her dedication, and even her doctor told her at her annual checkup that it was wonderful she kept such a routine. Sandra also ate plenty of vegetables, took her vitamins faithfully, and prided herself on avoiding the bad habits that had plagued so many of her friends. She didn't smoke, she rarely drank, and she tried to keep a positive attitude. But despite all this, she often felt tired and achy by late afternoon. Sometimes her legs felt heavy, her back ached, and she found herself struggling to stay alert during the evening news. She brushed it off as just getting older. After all, she was closing in on 70, and everyone told her aches, fatigue, and slowing down were simply part of the deal. Yet deep down, Sandra wondered if something else was happening that no one had explained to her. The truth revealed itself during a routine visit with her physician. He asked her how she spent her day after her morning walk. She described reading the newspaper for a few hours, doing crosswords at the kitchen table, watching her favorite shows, working on her crafts, and chatting with friends on the phone. She admitted that, by the end of each day, she had easily spent more than 10 hours sitting. The doctor frowned and told her something she had never heard before. Sandra, sitting is now considered the new smoking. For people over 60, sitting more than 8 hours a day increases the risk of early death by 60%. Sandra was stunned. She had always thought her daily walk was enough to offset any inactivity. But her doctor explained that scientists call this the exercise paradox. 30 minutes of walking or even an hour of exercise each day doesn't erase the harm caused by sitting for long stretches. He gave her an analogy she would never forget. Imagine smoking 1 cigarette, then holding your breath for 23 hours. That single breath of fresh air won't undo the damage. That's exactly how the body reacts to prolonged sitting. It wasn't just about sore muscles or stiff joints. For people over 60, metabolism naturally slows by 2 to 3% each year. Circulation becomes less efficient, muscles atrophy faster, and blood sugar regulation weakens. What might be a mild inconvenience for someone in their 40s or 50s becomes life-threatening for someone in their 70s. Extended sitting causes blood to pool in the legs, raising the risk of dangerous clots by 300%. It disrupts insulin function, accelerating diabetes progression. Perhaps most frightening of all, it reduces blood flow to the brain by up to 20%, increasing the risk of cognitive decline and memory loss. Her doctor gave her a simple test to see where she stood. He asked her to sit in a chair, cross her arms over her chest, and stand up 5 times without using her hands or relying on momentum. Sandra struggled. By the 3rd attempt, she was breathless and needed to steady herself. She felt embarrassed, but her doctor reassured her. This isn't about shame. It's about awareness. This test shows us how much your sitting lifestyle has already begun to steal your independence. That night, Sandra went home in shock. She had always considered herself health-conscious. How could something as simple as sitting undo all her efforts? She began researching on her own and discovered study after study confirming what her doctor had said. Sitting 8 or more hours a day increases mortality risk dramatically, even in people who exercise. Seniors who spend long hours sitting are far more likely to develop cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, depression, and even dementia. The evidence was undeniable. At first, Sandra felt discouraged. She wondered if it was too late to change. But she soon discovered there was hope, and it came in the form of something called the 50-10 rule. The concept was beautifully simple. For every 50 minutes of sitting, you stand up and move for 10 minutes. It didn't require a gym membership, fancy equipment, or grueling workouts. It just meant breaking up sitting time with gentle, regular movement. Sandra decided to give it a try. She bought a simple timer and set it to ring every 50 minutes. When the alarm went off, she stood up, marched in place, stretched her arms, or walked around the house. During her favorite TV shows, she started doing light leg lifts and arm circles during commercial breaks. She converted part of her crossword puzzle routine into a standing activity by using a raised desk. When chatting with friends on the phone, she made it a habit to stand or pace instead of sitting. The first week felt strange. She often forgot to move when the timer rang, and her muscles protested at being woken from hours of stillness. But she persisted. By the end of the second week, she noticed something remarkable. Her afternoon energy slump was less severe. Within a month, she could complete the sit-to-stand test her doctor had given her. Not just 5 times, but 10 times, and without losing her breath. Her circulation improved, her blood sugar readings stabilized, and most importantly, she began to feel like herself again. Vibrant, capable, and independent. Sandra's story is not unique. Across the country, millions of seniors are unknowingly sabotaging their health simply by sitting too much. The statistics are sobering. A large study published in the American Journal of Epidemiology tracked over 200,000 adults and found that sitting more than 8 hours a day was associated with a significantly higher risk of early death. And the impact was strongest in older adults. Prolonged sitting has been directly linked to increased cases of heart disease, certain cancers, and impaired cognitive function. Why does sitting harm seniors so severely? Scientists point to several mechanisms. First, when muscles are inactive, they burn less fat and handle blood sugar poorly, leading to higher risks of diabetes. Second, circulation slows dramatically, which can cause swelling, clots, and reduced oxygen delivery to vital organs. Third, the body's posture changes, straining the spine, compressing organs, and weakening core muscles. Fourth, psychological effects emerge. People who sit for long periods are more likely to feel isolated, anxious, and depressed. For seniors, this combination becomes a dangerous cocktail. But the beauty of the 50-10 rule is its accessibility. It doesn't demand that seniors become marathon runners or heavyweight lifters. It simply invites movement back into daily life in manageable doses. 10 minutes of light activity every hour adds up to nearly 2 hours of movement each day, which can dramatically reduce risks. And those 10 minutes don't have to be complicated. Simple activities like marching in place, stretching, walking to the mailbox, or even doing wall push-ups are enough to counter the damage of sitting. Sandra's transformation became a source of inspiration for her friends. At first, they teased her when she stood up during bridge games to walk around the room. But when they saw how her energy levels soared and how her confidence returned, they began following her lead. Soon, they formed a small group of neighborhood seniors who reminded each other to move every hour. What started as a solitary effort became a community practice that brought laughter and camaraderie. The health improvements extended beyond physical strength. Sandra noticed her mood improved significantly. The fogginess that once clouded her mind in the afternoons lifted. Her sleep quality improved, and she woke feeling refreshed rather than groggy. Her doctor was astonished at her progress. Blood work revealed lower inflammatory markers, and her blood pressure, once creeping upward, had returned to a healthy range. The simple act of moving more had cascaded into benefits across every area of her health. For seniors listening to Sandra's story, the lesson is clear. You may believe that your 30-minute morning walk or occasional yoga class is enough, but if you spend the rest of your day sitting, the benefits are canceled out. Longevity isn't just about bursts of exercise. It's about consistent movement throughout the day. The body was never designed to remain motionless for hours on end, especially as we grow older. Think about your own day. How many hours do you spend sitting? Reading the newspaper, watching television, driving, using the computer, talking on the phone. All of these add up. If the total reaches 8 hours or more, the risks rise sharply. The good news is that awareness is the first step. Once you recognize the danger, you can take simple actions to change it. One of the easiest strategies is to pair movement with existing habits. If you enjoy watching television, stand up and stretch during every commercial break. If you talk on the phone, pace around the room instead of sitting. If you enjoy puzzles or crosswords, set up a standing desk or counter space where you can do them on your feet. Keep resistance bands or light hand weights nearby and use them for a few minutes each hour. These small choices accumulate into life-saving habits. Another important point is to reframe how you think about movement. Many seniors believe that unless they are sweating or exerting themselves intensely, it doesn't count. That's simply not true. The goal is not to break records, but to keep blood flowing, muscles engaged, and the brain alert. Light movement, done consistently, is far more beneficial than occasional bursts of vigorous exercise. Sandra herself became an advocate for this mindset. She often told her grandchildren, "It's not about how hard you push in one moment. It's about how often you choose to move." She recognized that independence in later years depends less on monumental efforts and more on steady, daily discipline. 2 years after her wake-up call, Sandra is thriving. At 70, she leads a hiking group of local seniors through the Rocky Mountains. The woman who once struggled to rise from a chair without using her hands is now climbing trails and inspiring others to reclaim their health. Her story proves that it is never too late to change. By breaking free from the deadly habit of prolonged sitting, she added not just years to her life, but life to her years. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The message to every senior is simple. Don't underestimate the power of your chair. Sitting may feel harmless, but over time, it quietly steals vitality, independence, and longevity. You have the ability to change that starting today. Set a timer, stand up, move for 10 minutes, and watch how your body responds. The transformation, as Sandra discovered, is nothing short of remarkable. Carl was 72 years old, and by most measures, he was disciplined. He had always considered himself a man who lived with order. His neighbors admired how the lights in his house clicked off at exactly the same time each night and how he appeared on his porch with a cup of coffee at dawn every morning. To him, this predictability was a badge of honor. He believed routine was the key to a long life. Yet something didn't add up. Even though Carl was following what he thought was a healthy pattern, he felt older than his years. He woke up groggy, dragged himself through the afternoons, and noticed his memory wasn't as sharp as it used to be. He often joked to his friends that he wasn't as quick upstairs anymore, but inside, he felt worried. It seemed unfair. He had survived heart surgery in his 60s, given up red meat as his doctor advised, and kept himself active. Why then did he feel like he was aging faster than the 85-year-old neighbor across the street, who seemed to radiate endless energy? The answer came during a routine checkup. When his doctor asked him how much sleep he was getting, Carl proudly said, 5 to 6 hours a night, like clockwork. I don't need more than that. I've always been one of those people who can run on less sleep. He expected a nod of approval. Instead, his doctor's expression turned serious. Carl, that's not a gift. It's a risk. Seniors need just as much sleep as younger adults, 7 to 9 hours a night. Consistently sleeping less than 7 hours puts you in danger of heart disease, stroke, and even Alzheimer's. You're literally cutting years off your life. Carl was stunned. He had grown up hearing the common myth that older people simply needed less sleep. His father had said it, his friends repeated it, and every magazine article seemed to hint at it. But his doctor explained that after age 60, sleep isn't less important, it's more important. The body's repair mechanisms slow with age, which means the hours of deep, restorative sleep become absolutely critical. During those hours, the brain washes away toxic proteins that can trigger dementia. The heart and blood vessels repair microscopic damage. The immune system recharges, preparing to fight off infections. Without enough sleep, those processes remain unfinished, leaving the body vulnerable. The statistics were frightening. Seniors who slept fewer than 7 hours a night had a 50% higher risk of heart disease, a 300% higher risk of stroke, and experienced cognitive decline 3 times faster than their well-rested peers. Carl felt a chill run through him. All those nights he had boasted about being an early riser who didn't need much sleep now looked like a decades-long mistake. That afternoon, he paid closer attention to his body. For years, he had brushed off his daily 2 p.m. crash, thinking it was just part of getting older. But now he realized it was his body's desperate cry for the restorative sleep it wasn't getting. He also began to notice how often he woke up during the night. Sometimes 6 or 8 times, often so briefly that he barely remembered. But those micro-awakenings were enough to rob him of deep sleep stages. Broken sleep, his doctor explained, is even more dangerous than short sleep because it prevents the brain from entering the cycles where true healing happens. Carl was tempted to grab an over-the-counter sleep aid, like so many of his friends did. But his doctor warned him of the medication trap. Sleep pills create a cycle of dependency and actually disrupt sleep architecture, suppressing the very deep stages the body needs most. Seniors, in particular, were vulnerable to this trap. The more they relied on medication, the worse their natural sleep became. Carl realized that if he wanted real rest, he had to make lifestyle changes, not just pop a pill. That night, Carl sat down at his desk and did something he hadn't done since his working years. He made a plan. He called it his Sleep Restoration Project. At the top of the page, he wrote down the 3-2-1 rule. No large meals 3 hours before bed. No liquids 2 hours before bed. No screens 1 hour before bed. He posted it on his refrigerator as a reminder. The hardest part for him was giving up his late-night TV habit. He had grown accustomed to falling asleep in his recliner with the blue glow of the television humming in the background. But he learned that screens, whether TV, phone, or tablet, emit light that tricks the brain into staying awake, delaying the release of melatonin, the hormone that tells the body it's time to sleep. The first week without late-night television was rough. He lay awake, restless, missing the familiar distraction. But by the second week, he noticed something new. When he finally drifted off, his sleep felt deeper. Carl also created what he called his worry window. Every evening before bedtime, he gave himself 15 minutes to write down every concern swirling in his head. His doctor had explained that many seniors carry invisible stress into bed, fears about health, finances, family, or the future. These thoughts trigger adrenaline and cortisol, the very hormones that keep the body alert. By putting his worries on paper and physically setting the notebook aside, Carl symbolically told his brain, "Not tonight." To his surprise, it worked. He still had worries, but they no longer raced endlessly through his mind at 2 a.m. He also made changes to his bedroom. He lowered the thermostat to 66 degrees after learning that cooler temperatures signal the body to enter deep sleep. He bought blackout curtains to eliminate even the faintest streetlight glow. For years, he had dismissed these details as minor, but he discovered that older bodies are far more sensitive to environmental disturbances. Even a small amount of light or warmth could keep him from cycling into deep rest. The transformation wasn't immediate. For the first few weeks, Carl stumbled, sometimes reverting to old habits, sometimes waking up frustrated. But slowly, he began to notice subtle changes. By the 4th week, he was regularly sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. By the 6th, his 2 p.m. energy crashes disappeared. His memory felt sharper. He found himself recalling names, appointments, and small details with ease. His doctor marveled at the improvements in his blood pressure and blood sugar. Most importantly, Carl felt alive again. He shared his experience with friends, many of whom admitted they also slept 5 or 6 hours and thought it was normal. They laughed at first when he talked about his worry window and strict rules. But when they saw how vibrant and clear-headed he had become, they asked for his tips. Soon, Carl found himself almost a sleep coach in his retirement community, encouraging others to adopt the same changes. The science behind his transformation fascinated him. He read that during deep sleep, the brain's glymphatic system flushes away toxic proteins like beta-amyloid, which are strongly linked to Alzheimer's. He learned that his heart was undergoing nightly repair during those hours, recovering from daily stress. His immune system was recharging, which explained why he caught fewer colds and recovered faster. For the first time, Carl understood that sleep wasn't wasted time. It was essential maintenance. Skipping it was like never changing the oil in a car. You could keep driving, but the engine would eventually fail. He also learned about the hidden culprits that disrupt seniors' sleep. Medications for blood pressure, arthritis, or even allergies could interfere with sleep cycles. Frequent bathroom trips, another common complaint, could be managed by adjusting fluid intake earlier in the evening. Anxiety about aging, finances, or loneliness played a silent but powerful role. Each factor needed to be addressed, not ignored. Carl realized that sleep wasn't just about how long he lay in bed. It was about quality, consistency, and the willingness to prepare his body for rest. The 3-2-1 rule gave him structure. The worry window calmed his mind. The cool, dark bedroom created an environment his aging body needed. Piece by piece, he built a system that worked. 2 years later, Carl is thriving at 74. He tells anyone who will listen that sleep gave him his life back. He jokes that he feels smarter now than he did a decade ago. His children no longer worry about his forgetfulness, and his doctor praises his improved health. But perhaps the greatest change is how he feels about aging. Instead of fearing decline, he approaches each day with confidence, knowing he has the tools to stay sharp and strong. Carl's story offers a powerful reminder for anyone over 60. The myth that seniors need less sleep is not only wrong, it's dangerous. Sleep is the foundation upon which every other aspect of health rests. Without it, exercise, diet, and stress management cannot fully succeed. With it, the body and mind regain strength, clarity, and resilience. So if you find yourself nodding off in the afternoon, struggling to focus, or brushing off fatigue as just aging, consider Carl's journey. Ask yourself how many hours of true, restorative sleep you're getting. Pay attention to the quality of your rest, not just the quantity. And remember, it is never too late to change. Your body, even in your 70s or 80s, still has an incredible ability to heal and renew when given the rest it deserves. The lesson is simple yet profound. Don't underestimate the power of sleep. Protect it, prioritize it, and cherish it as one of the most valuable medicines you have. As Carl discovered, reclaiming those extra hours of rest might just give you back not only years of life, but life in your years. Rita was 67 years old when her world grew unbearably quiet. For more than 40 years, she had shared her life with her husband, a man who knew her rhythms better than she knew them herself. They had a small house filled with memories, a calendar packed with family events, and countless conversations that stretched late into the night. When he passed away suddenly at 65, Rita felt not only grief but also a profound emptiness that reached into every corner of her life. At first, she thought she was managing. Friends brought casseroles. Neighbors stopped by to check in. Her adult children called regularly, but they lived in different cities with jobs and families of their own. As weeks turned into months, the visits slowed, the calls grew less frequent, and Rita found herself declining invitations without even realizing why. Cooking for one felt pointless. Driving to Beath OK Club seemed like too much effort. Even picking up the phone felt heavy, as if her sadness would burden whoever answered on the other end. 6 months after her husband's death, Rita's life had shrunk to 3 places: her house, the grocery store, and her weekly doctor's appointment. She filled her days with puzzles, gardening, and reading, telling herself that staying busy was enough. But in truth, she was slipping into isolation. She didn't yet understand that keeping occupied is not the same as staying connected. The health effects of her solitude began to creep in quietly. She started sleeping poorly, waking up often in the night. Her blood pressure edged higher at each doctor's visit. She felt more tired, more irritable, and more forgetful. She chalked it up to age, but the reality was something far more dangerous. Loneliness was taking its toll. Modern science has proven what many seniors learn the hard way. Loneliness isn't just unpleasant, it's deadly. A landmark study by Dr. Julianne Holt-Lundstad revealed that chronic loneliness carries the same health risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. For seniors, the numbers are even more alarming. Social isolation increases the risk of premature death by 50%, dementia by 64%, and heart disease by nearly 30%. The statistics are staggering, but the reasons are clear. When the brain perceives isolation, it reacts as though the body is under constant threat. Stress hormones surge. Inflammation spreads silently through the body. The immune system weakens, leaving a person more vulnerable to illness. Sleep becomes fragmented. The heart works harder under the strain. Loneliness literally accelerates the breakdown of the body and mind. Rita's doctor gently warned her of this reality. He asked her a simple question: how many meaningful conversations have you had this week? Not pleasantries at the checkout line, real, connected conversations. Rita hesitated, then admitted the truth. Maybe one. Sometimes none. The doctor nodded gravely. That puts you in the danger zone. Fewer than 5 per week is risky. Fewer than 2 is crisis territory. Hearing the word crisis jolted Rita. She hadn't seen herself that way. She thought of herself as independent, resilient, even self-sufficient. But she realized independence without connection was quietly stealing her vitality. She returned home that day with more than a prescription refill. She carried a sense of urgency to change. Her turning point came when she read about a simple practice called the One New Person Per Month Challenge. The idea wasn't about dating or replacing her husband. It was about intentionally building one new meaningful connection each month. It could be a neighbor, a volunteer colleague, a fellow church member, or even someone younger who could benefit from her wisdom. One person each month sounded doable, not overwhelming. Rita decided to try. Her first step was small. She signed up to volunteer at a local literacy center, helping adults learn to read. She was nervous, worried she wouldn't know what to say or that she'd feel out of place. But within the first hour, she realized her presence mattered. Her student, a middle-aged woman, looked at her with gratitude and said, "You make me feel like I can do this." For the first time in months, Rita felt useful again. The following month, she joined a senior hiking group. The walks were gentle, often on flat trails, but the conversations along the way carried her further than any step could. She met others who had lost spouses, battled illness, or felt the sting of children moving far away. The shared stories made her feel less alone. By the third month, Rita had begun mentoring young mothers at her church. They came to her with questions about raising children, balancing work and family, and finding patience. She realized she had decades of wisdom to offer, and their gratitude gave her a sense of purpose she thought she had lost forever. But the real breakthrough came when Rita embraced intergenerational connections. She began babysitting for her neighbor's grandchildren once a week. At first, she thought she was simply helping out. But soon she realized those afternoons filled her with joy. The children's laughter echoed through her home, replacing the silence that had weighed so heavily. They brought her into their world of games, questions, and boundless curiosity. In turn, she shared her stories, her cooking, and her gentle guidance. It was not a replacement for her late husband, but it was a new kind of family that gave her days color again. Technology, once intimidating, became her ally. Her daughter showed her how to video call, and soon she was seeing her grandchildren across the country several times a week. She joined an online community for widows, where she could share her journey and support others walking the same lonely path. She even downloaded a neighborhood app that connected her with locals who shared her interests. To her surprise, she found a gardening partner just 3 blocks away. 2 years after beginning this experiment, Rita's calendar looked nothing like it once had. Where there had been empty squares, now there were notes about volunteer shifts, community garden meetings, book club gatherings, and family video calls. Her phone buzzed with friends checking in, neighbors inviting her for coffee, and new acquaintances eager to see her again. Her doctor was astonished at the changes. Her blood pressure had improved, her sleep was deeper, her cognitive tests were sharper, and her mood had lifted dramatically. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Most importantly, Rita felt alive. She described it to her daughter as like having my light turned back on. She discovered that solitude and loneliness are not the same. Solitude, choosing time alone, can be restorative and peaceful. Loneliness, feeling disconnected, even in a crowd, is toxic. The key was having the choice and the ability to connect when she wanted to. Rita's story carries a powerful lesson for anyone over 60. It is easy to believe that isolation is just part of aging, that friends pass away, children move, and social circles shrink, leaving nothing to be done. But the truth is that connection can be rebuilt at any age. It doesn't require dozens of new friends or constant social activity. It begins with one intentional step, one meaningful conversation, one new person each month. Science supports her experience. Researchers have found that strong social bonds not only extend life but also improve its quality. Seniors who maintain close relationships live longer, think clearly, and experience less depression. The brain, quite literally, thrives on connection. Every phone call, every shared laugh, every walk with a friend is medicine for the soul and the body. For those who feel overwhelmed, Rita offers advice. Start small. Say yes to one invitation. Make one phone call. Volunteer for 1 hour. Open yourself to one new relationship. Over time, those single steps add up to a life filled with meaning and community. She often tells her story at church gatherings, reminding others that independence does not mean isolation. We are wired for connection, she says, her voice steady with conviction. The years I thought I was doing fine alone were the years I was slowly fading. The years I reached out to others are the years I truly started living again. At 69, Rita now leads a group for widows in her town, offering comfort and practical advice for those who feel the crushing weight of loneliness. She organizes neighborhood potlucks, tends to her community garden, and continues her weekly babysitting sessions. Her home, once silent, is now filled with laughter, conversation, and purpose. Loneliness had once been her deadliest habit, as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But through small, consistent choices, she rewrote her story. She went from isolated to integrated, from invisible to indispensable, from merely surviving to truly thriving. Her journey reminds us that the human heart, at any age, beats strongest in the presence of connection. And no matter how late it feels, it is never too late to open the door, step outside, and find your people. David was 74 years old and prided himself on being a man who followed the rules. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't careless. He had always been the type to listen to his doctor, read the nutrition articles in the newspaper, and stick to the advice that had guided his generation for decades. Whole grains were better than white bread. Orange juice was the perfect start to the day. Low-fat products were healthier than full-fat products. Vegetable oils were lighter and therefore better for the heart. For more than 30 years, he lived by these principles. Each morning began with the same breakfast: 2 slices of whole wheat toast with a generous spread of jam, washed down with a large glass of orange juice. Sometimes, on days when he felt especially health-conscious, he added a cup of low-fat yogurt or a handful of whole grain crackers. He believed he was doing exactly what the experts recommended. And in truth, his habits seemed saintly compared to the bacon and eggs breakfasts of his childhood. But despite his efforts, David wasn't thriving. His joints ached nearly every day, especially in the mornings. He often felt sluggish after lunch, needing a nap even though he had slept 8 hours the night before. His mind felt clouded, like a fog that rolled in and refused to leave. Cuts and bruises healed slowly, sometimes taking weeks. He found himself irritable, quick to anger at small frustrations. He told himself, "This is just getting old." But deep down, he wondered why some of his friends, even those who hadn't been as disciplined, seemed sharper, stronger, and more energetic than him. The turning point came during a routine blood test. His doctor called him in and reviewed the results with concern. His C-reactive protein, a marker of inflammation, was dangerously high. His HbA1c levels showed he was pre-diabetic, even though he didn't eat sweets. "David," the doctor said gently, "your diet may be causing more harm than good. What you think is healthy is actually fueling chronic inflammation throughout your body." David was stunned. How could toast, juice, and yogurt, foods that had been promoted as healthy for decades, be hurting him? His doctor explained that after age 60, the body's ability to handle carbohydrates diminishes dramatically. The metabolism slows. Insulin sensitivity decreases. Foods that might have been manageable at 40 become inflammatory and destructive at 70. That healthy whole wheat toast was spiking his blood sugar higher than a candy bar would. The orange juice, even though it was 100% natural, was delivering a massive dose of fructose that his 74-year-old liver couldn't process efficiently. The low-fat yogurt was loaded with hidden sugars that his body treated no differently than dessert. The vegetable oils he used in cooking were high in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation. And the crackers he snacked on throughout the day kept his blood sugar levels on a roller coaster, leaving him fatigued and irritable. Suddenly, all his symptoms made sense. The constant joint pain, the brain fog, the fatigue, the slow healing, the irritable moods, all were classic signs of chronic inflammation. And inflammation, his doctor reminded him, is the root cause of nearly every age-related disease. Heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, arthritis, and even many cancers. For a few days, David felt betrayed. He had followed the rules faithfully, only to learn the rules were outdated. But he also felt a spark of determination. If his body was under attack, he wanted to fight back. That's when he discovered the concept of the senior-specific Mediterranean approach. He had heard of the Mediterranean diet before: fish, vegetables, olive oil, nuts. But this version was adapted specifically for older adults, taking into account slower metabolisms and reduced insulin sensitivity. The goal was to focus on anti-inflammatory foods that worked with an aging body, not against it. David started with breakfast. Out went the toast and juice. In came eggs, cooked in olive oil, with spinach and avocado on the side. The protein stabilized his blood sugar. The healthy fats reduced inflammation. The vegetables provided nutrients without the sugar spike. To his surprise, he didn't miss his old breakfast as much as he thought he would. Within days, he noticed his afternoon brain fog lifting. Lunch became his largest meal of the day, time to when insulin sensitivity was highest. He often had grilled salmon with a salad of leafy greens, tomatoes, cucumbers, and a drizzle of olive oil. Dinner, once his biggest meal, became lighter: soup, roasted vegetables, or a small portion of chicken. He discovered that by shifting his eating patterns, his digestion improved and his energy remained steady throughout the evening. He also began experimenting with anti-inflammatory spices: turmeric with black pepper, ginger with cinnamon. Simple additions that added flavor and healing compounds to his meals. He swapped vegetable oils for extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil. He replaced his low-fat yogurt with full-fat Greek yogurt, unsweetened, topped with berries instead of jam. He traded crackers for nuts, potatoes for sweet potatoes, and fruit juice for water with lemon. At first, the changes felt overwhelming. Grocery shopping required a new eye. Old favorites were hard to give up. But he remembered the foggy afternoons, the aching joints, the frustration of feeling much older than his age. That memory pushed him forward. The results were dramatic. Within 3 months, his joint pain decreased by 80%. He no longer needed to sit down after lunch because his energy no longer plummeted. His sleep improved, and he woke feeling refreshed. His mood stabilized, and his family commented that he seemed more cheerful and engaged. His follow-up blood tests astonished his doctor. His inflammatory markers had dropped to levels typical of a man 20 years younger. His pre-diabetic blood sugar patterns had normalized. David also learned an important lesson about supplements. The market was flooded with bottles promising to reduce inflammation, boost energy, or restore youth. But many of them were poorly absorbed or ineffective, especially for seniors. He focused on the essentials with strong scientific backing: high-quality omega-3s for heart and brain health, vitamin D for immunity and bone strength, and magnesium for muscle and nerve function. These, combined with his new eating habits, gave him the support his body truly needed. As he embraced this new way of eating, David realized food was not just fuel, it was medicine. Every choice he made at the table was either feeding inflammation or fighting it. He began to view his meals not as restrictions, but as opportunities. Instead of thinking, "I can't have this," he asked, "what can I add that will help me thrive?" He discovered joy in experimenting with colorful vegetables, in finding satisfaction in simple but nourishing meals, and in reclaiming his kitchen as a place of healing. His friends were curious. Many of them had the same habits: toast, juice, low-fat products, and the same complaints: aches, fatigue, fog. At first, they teased him when he refused orange juice at brunch. But when they saw his transformation, they asked questions. Soon, he was hosting small cooking demonstrations, showing them how to make anti-inflammatory meals. He shared recipes, explained the science, and encouraged them to make one small change at a time. 2 years later, David's life looks completely different. At 76, he is off 3 of the medications he once relied on. His inflammatory markers remain low. His mind is clear, his energy steady, and his joint pain nearly gone. He tells people, "I feel 20 years younger, and I mean it." But beyond the physical improvements, David feels empowered. For decades, he believed his health was on a downward slope, that aging meant decline. Now he knows the truth. The body, even in its 70s, has a remarkable ability to heal when given the right tools. Food can either accelerate aging or slow it. The choice is his. David's story carries an urgent message for every senior. Be wary of outdated advice. Question the habits you think are healthy. Pay attention to the signals your body gives: aches, fatigue, fog, irritability. These are not inevitable signs of aging. They are warning signs of inflammation. And inflammation, if ignored, will steal years from your life. The good news is that change doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness, intention, and small daily choices. Replace juice with water. Swap bread for eggs and vegetables. Choose olive oil instead of vegetable oil. Add a handful of nuts instead of crackers. One change at a time, one meal at a time, you can transform your health. As David often says to his friends, "It's never too late. I thought I was too old to change. But the truth is, change gave me back years I thought I had already lost." His journey reminds us that age is not an excuse to surrender. At 74, he began. At 76, he thrives. And his message is clear: what you put on your plate today will shape how you live tomorrow. Choose wisely, because your food can either be your deadliest habit or your greatest healer. Nancy was 69 when she learned just how heavy invisible burdens can become. From the outside, she looked like a woman who had everything under control. She was retired after decades in a successful career, lived comfortably in a modest but well-kept home, and had grown children who checked in often. She was financially stable, surrounded by friends, and had no daily emergencies to contend with. Yet inside, she was unraveling. Nancy had always described herself as a worrier. To her, it felt like a strength. She prided herself on planning for every possibility, preparing for disasters before they struck, keeping detailed notes on her family's medical history, and setting aside money for any conceivable problem. Her mantra was simple: if I worry about it now, I won't be blindsided later. But what she believed was prudence was, in fact, chronic stress. She didn't shout or cry or pace the floors at night. Her stress was quieter, low-level, persistent, and ever-present. It whispered into her mornings as she made coffee, it hovered over her shoulder during errands, and it clung to her at night as she tried to fall asleep. Her mind rehearsed every possible what-if scenario. What if her husband's blood pressure spiked again? What if her daughter's job loss turned into financial ruin? What if she became a burden on her children someday? What if she developed dementia? What if she fell and no one found her? To Nancy, these thoughts were part of being a responsible mother, wife, and grandmother. But her body was keeping score in ways she couldn't see. Her annual physical revealed the damage. Her doctor looked at her results with concern. Her blood pressure was dangerously high. Her cholesterol levels were worsening. More alarming, her cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, was far above normal. Elevated cortisol, he explained, can wreak havoc on nearly every system in the body. It accelerates aging at the cellular level, suppresses the immune system, raises blood sugar, and contributes to heart disease and stroke. Left unchecked, it could shave years off her life. Nancy was shocked. She told her doctor she wasn't living a stressful life. She was retired, had financial stability, and lived in a quiet neighborhood. How could stress be killing her? The doctor explained that the most dangerous stress isn't the obvious kind that comes with emergencies or crises. It's the chronic, low-level stress that builds up over decades. It's the constant state of worry that keeps the body's alarm system permanently switched on, flooding it with cortisol day after day. For seniors, this is what he called the senior stress paradox. Older adults often carry the heaviest mental loads: memories of past traumas, regrets over missed opportunities, grief over loved ones lost, and anxiety about an uncertain future. The stress response system, once efficient, no longer turns off easily with age. Cortisol lingers longer, doing more damage. Nancy left that appointment rattled. She began noticing just how deeply stress shaped her daily life. She woke in the middle of the night with her jaw clenched. She realized she did not eat out of hunger, but to quiet her nerves. She declined social invitations because she needed to rest, when in truth, she was consumed with anxious thoughts. The very habits that were supposed to keep her safe were, in reality, eroding her health. She needed to change, but she didn't know how. Meditation sounded impossible. She couldn't quiet her mind. Yoga felt intimidating. Therapy seemed like something for other people, not for someone who was supposed to be the strong one in the family. But when her doctor suggested small, senior-friendly mindfulness techniques, Nancy decided to give them a try. Her first breakthrough came from something deceptively simple: making 2 lists. On one sheet of paper, she wrote things I can control. On the other hand, she wrote things I can influence but not control. Under control, she listed her daily habits, her responses to situations, and her self-care. Under influence, she listed her children's choices, her future health outcomes, and larger world events. She looked at the lists every morning, reminding herself to invest her energy only in the first column. The act of seeing it on paper reduced the endless swirl in her mind. Next, she created a nightly journaling practice. Instead of trying to empty her mind through meditation, she practiced what her doctor called loving awareness. She acknowledged her worries with compassion, writing them down, giving them space, and then set them aside. She adopted a worry window each evening, 15 minutes to unload her fears onto paper. Afterward, she closed the notebook and placed it in a drawer. Symbolically, it was a way of telling herself, "I will carry these tomorrow, but not into my sleep tonight." Nancy also began practicing gentle yoga designed for older adults. At first, she felt awkward moving through the poses, her body stiff and unfamiliar with the shapes. But with each session, she realized the stretches weren't just physical. They unlocked the tightness in her chest and shoulders where stress had lived for years. She discovered the power of pairing breath with movement, exhaling slowly to calm her nervous system. Gardening, something she had once seen only as a chore, became another form of therapy. She learned that caring for plants, digging, watering, pruning, helped her release tension. When her hands were in the dirt, her mind quieted in a way that surprised her. Her greatest transformation, however, came from adopting what she called the legacy perspective. Instead of obsessing over every possible bad outcome, she asked herself one question: how do I want to be remembered? Suddenly, the endless cycle of worry shifted into something deeper. She wanted to be remembered as calm, wise, and present, not anxious and preoccupied. She realized that the way she lived each day became her legacy, one that her children and grandchildren would carry forward. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. This shift was profound. Worrying about what might happen no longer felt like protection. It felt like wasting the time she still had. She began to live with more intention, focusing on meaningful activities instead of rehearsing disasters. She joined a senior stress-sharing group, where she met others carrying similar invisible burdens. Sharing her fears aloud reduced their power over her. She discovered she wasn't alone. Slowly but surely, her body responded. 6 months after beginning her new practices, her cortisol levels dropped into a healthy range. Her blood pressure stabilized. She slept more deeply, her jaw unclenched, her appetite normalized. She laughed more often, accepted more invitations, and even began teaching others what she had learned. She started leading workshops at her community center called Stress Less After 60, showing her peers simple techniques for reclaiming peace of mind. Nancy, once consumed by what-if scenarios, now tells others, the future will always hold uncertainty. But how you show up today, that is within your control. That is your legacy. Her story is a reminder that stress, left unchecked, becomes the most dangerous habit of all. It amplifies every other health problem: poor sleep, unhealthy eating, loneliness, and inactivity. It creates a perfect storm that robs seniors of the years they've worked so hard to reach. But Nancy's transformation proves that it is never too late to take back control. Through mindfulness adapted for her age, through journaling, yoga, gardening, and perspective shifts, she discovered peace she had never known, even in her younger years. At 71, She radiates calm confidence. Her friends describe her as a beacon of peaceful wisdom. Her grandchildren say she is the grandmother who listens fully, without distraction. Her doctor marvels at her health. Most importantly, Nancy herself feels lighter, as though she has set down a weight she had carried for decades. The lesson is clear. Stress doesn't have to be the silent killer of your later years. By recognizing it, naming it, and gently reshaping your response to it, you can transform not just your health but your entire experience of aging. You can trade fear-based living for purpose-based living, just as Nancy did. And in doing so, you may discover that your later years can be the most peaceful, meaningful, and joyful of your life. 2 years after their turning points, the lives of Sandra, Carl, Rita, David, and Nancy looked nothing like before. Sandra, once struggling to rise from a chair, was hiking mountain trails with friends. Carl, who used to drag through his afternoons, now woke each morning sharp and refreshed, his memory clearer than it had been in years. Rita, who had shrunk her world to 4 walls, filled her days with community, friendship, and laughter, her calendar busier than ever. David, who thought healthy toast and juice were saving him, reversed years of inflammation and felt 20 years younger. And Nancy, once consumed by worry, now radiated a calm confidence that inspired everyone around her. What made their transformation so powerful wasn't just one change. Each small step, standing more, sleeping better, reaching out, eating differently, calming the mind, set off a ripple effect that touched every part of their health. Better sleep lowered stress, less stress improved eating, healthier eating gave energy for movement, and stronger bodies created the courage to connect again. The compound effect of change is extraordinary, and it proves that transformation is possible at any age. The greatest truth their stories teach us is that it is never too late. Whether you are 60, 70, or even 90, your body and mind still hold an incredible ability to heal and grow when given the chance. One choice today can begin rewriting the years ahead. If this message speaks to you, let it be the start of your own journey. Share your experience in the comments below. You never know who needs your story. And if you want more guidance to keep living strong, healthy, and independent, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone you love. Together, we can help more people not just add years to life, but life to years.